Welcome back. So today we want to look at a question on process account without WIP when work in progress is not involved. So process account without WIP. So we'll do question 3. So let me read the question. So they are saying a chemical compound is made by raw material being processed through two processes. The output of process A is passed to process B, where further material is added to the mix. Okay, so we want to produce two things and we have two processes for us to be able to produce. When we produce in process 1, what we produce, which is the output, will be taken to the next stage, which is process 2, where another material is being added. So the question continues by saying, the details of the process cost for the financial period number 10 were as shown below. So we have process A. The material that was used, which is direct material for process A, is 2,000 kilograms at 5,000 kwacha per kg. So when you want to find the total material that was used, we'll just multiply 2,000 kg by 5,000. Then direct labor, we spent money on labor for 7,200,000 kwacha. Process plant time, it's 140 hours at 60 kwacha per hour. So we are also spending money on the process plant time for process A. So we are spending 60,000 each hour. So if you want to find the total money that will be spent for process A, it is 60,000 times 140 kwacha. Okay. Then process B, we have been told that direct material is 1,400 kg at 12,000 per kg. Okay. Direct labor, we have been told it's 4,200,000. Process plant time, it's 80 hours at 72,500 per hour. So you can do the same like the way we are doing for A. If you want to find the totals, you're just multiplying. Okay. The question continues by saying, the departmental overhead for period 10 was 6,840,000 kwacha and is absorbed into the cost of each process on direct labor cost. So this statement, what it's saying is that on each process account, there's process A and process B. So on each one, there are some departmental overheads. And the overheads, like the budgeted was 6,840,000 kwacha. And they are saying these overheads will be absorbed in each process using a direct labor cost. So if you remember what we always do when it comes to overheads, we always first have to find the overhead absorption rate. So in this case, if we want to find the overhead absorption rate, we know that the formula is budgeted overhead over budgeted activity level. So for the budgeted overheads, we are going to be using this same 6 million. Then for the budgeted activity level, since we have been told that it's on the basis of direct labor cost, so we are going to add the labor cost for the two processes. Okay, so we continue reading the question. So down here they are saying the expected outputs for process A, it's 80% of the input. Okay, then the actual output for process A is 1,400 kgs. So now when you look at this statement that's saying expected output was 80% of the input, what is this telling you? So this is simply telling you that they are allowing you a 20% as a normal loss. So from your inputs, like for example process A, we have seen that the direct material we are using 2,000 kg. So from 2,000 kg, they are expecting you to produce 80%, meaning 20% is normal loss. Yeah, so sometimes normal loss, they can state direct that the normal loss is 10%, or like the way they have shown in this case, we can see that normal loss is 20% for process A. Then for process B, the expected output is 90% of the input, meaning normal loss is just 10%, because 90 minus 100 minus 90, you are remaining with 10%. Actual output we have been given for process B. Okay, the question continues by saying, assume no finished inventory at the beginning of the period and no work in progress at either the beginning or the end of the period. Normal loss is contaminated material which is sold as scrap for 500 kwacha per kg from process A. So the normal loss for process A is sold at 500 kwacha as scrap. So when they say scrap, that's the normal loss for process A. Okay. So normal loss for process A, let's assume maybe we have like 400 kg as the normal loss. We have to value that at 500 kwacha per kg. Then the question continues, and 1825 kwacha per kg from process B. So for process B, we are going to value the normal loss at that amount per kg. So for both of which, immediate payment is received. Required, prepare the following accounts for period 10. So A, we are preparing process A. B, we are preparing process B. C, we are preparing the normal loss account. Then D, we are preparing the abnormal loss or abnormal gain account. Then E, we are preparing finished goods account. So this question carries 20 marks. That's nice, people. Let's now dive into the solutions. So understanding a question is halfway of answering it. You know, when you understand the question, it means you are able to answer. So yeah, if you haven't understood, you can still go through again. You can pause the video, start it so that you understand the question again. Okay, so let's proceed to the want to start by answering the first part, which was M, where they want us to do process A account. So let me just put the title here. So we are doing process A. So process A account, which is the first question. Okay. So now, what's the format for the process account without WIP? So the format is simple. We have the part for quantity and amount. So let me just put here. So we have the part for quantity. Okay. And we also have the part for the amount. Okay. So same this side also. On the credit side, we have the same part. So we have the part for quantity. Okay. So we have the part for quantity. And we also have the part for amount. Okay. So this is the format for the process account. So we can start with the first one. So now, what things fall on the debit side and what things do we put on the credit side for the process account? So I think that when you know that, it can easily help you to know how to put things. So on the debit side, we mostly put all those things where you are spending money on. What do we mean by that? So from the question, we can see we are spending money on buying raw materials, which is direct materials. So direct materials, we are going to put them on the debit side. What other things? Direct labor, we are spending money to pay workers. Process crunch time, we were spending money. Departmental overhead for process A, we were spending money. So all those things, we put them on the credits, on the debit side here. Then for the credit side, we just put two things: normal loss and the output. That's all, normal loss and the output. Then for the other things of abnormal loss, abnormal gain, those ones are debatable. They come at the end. You see how we deal with them. Okay, so we can start with our debit side. So we are saying here we put everything where we are spending money on. So from question A, we can start with the direct material. Okay, so for direct material for question A, what we have, let me just write here. So we are starting with direct material. Okay, so direct material for process A, in terms of amount, we know that we had the 2000. Okay, so we had 2000 kg. Then for the amount, what do? We multiply, because we said it was 5000 per kg. So we multiply 2000 by that. When I multiply, it's giving me 10 million kwacha. So it's giving me 10 million kwacha. Okay, what other things do we have? We are spending money on direct labor, so I can put direct labor also. Okay, so direct labor, how much are we spending? 7,200,000 kwacha for process A. Under quantity, you don't put anything, so we have 7,200,000. Okay, what else do we have? Process crunch time, we are spending money on that, so we have process crunch time. Okay, how much are we spending? We said the how much is in the question? Okay. So yeah, we are spending 60,000 kwacha per hour. So we can multiply 140 hours times 60,000 per hours. So even this one, there's nothing under the quantity. When I do the math, what I'm finding is 8,400,000. So we are just multiplying 140 hours times 60,000. That's how we are getting the totals here. Okay, then what other expense do we have for process A? So the other expense is the departmental overheads, and we are told that they are going to be absorbed based on direct labor cost. Okay, so let me put overheads here. So now for the overheads, it's not something that you just put direct per. We have to find the overhead absorption rate. When we find the overhead absorption rate, then we can absorb the overheads. Okay, so how do we find the overhead absorption rate? Let's do that. So for the overhead absorption rate, we know the formula. It is just the budgeted overheads over budgeted activity level. Okay, so budgeted overheads is the overhead that we have been told. So according to the question, the departmental overheads, we were told that it was 6,840,000 kwacha. Then for the budgeted activity level, it's the basis of apportion absorption. So in this case, we are told that it's based on direct labor cost. So when you are finding the overhead absorption rate, we are supposed to add all the labor costs that we have from process A and from process B. That's what you put down here as the budgeted activity level. So the direct labor cost for process A is 7,200,000 plus the direct labor cost for process B, it's 4,200,000 according to the question. So when we add what we are finding down on top, we maintain the 6 million. Then down, when I add, it's giving me 11,000 or 11,400,000 kwacha. Okay, so when we divide, it's giving me 0.6. So this is our overhead absorption rate, 0.6 kwacha. This is per labor cost, since that's the basis that we are using. Okay, so that's how we find our overhead absorption rate. So when you find the overhead absorption rate, this one, we are now supposed to multiply this by the actual labor cost for each process. So for process A, the actual labor cost was 7,200. So for us to find the expense in terms of overheads for process A, we are getting this and multiply by the actual, which is 7,200,000 for process A. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so what did we say? So process A, we were saying it's 0.6 multiplying by the actual labor cost, which is 7,200,000. Okay, so when I multiply that, what it is giving me as the overheads, it's giving me 4,320,000. So this is the overhead for process C. Okay. So just a quick recap on what we have done on the debit side. So on the debit side, we said we put all those things where we are spending money on. So we have direct material, we are spending money to buy that, and we bought 2,000 kg at 5,000 per kg. So the total is that in terms of amount. Direct labor, process plant time, we are just multiplying 140 hours times 60,000. Overheads, we first found the overhead absorption rate, which was 0.6. Then we multiply by the actual labor cost for process A, which is 7,200,000, giving us 4,320,000 as our overheads for process A. So this is about the debit side. We can now move on to the credit side of our process A account. So for the credit side, we said we only put two things. So what are those two things that we put? We said it's just the normal loss and the output. Okay, so for the normal loss, we can put here, so normal loss. Okay, so normal loss, what do we have in terms of quantity? So for the normal loss for process A, we were told that we are expected to produce 80%, meaning 20% it's a normal loss. So we are finding 20% of the input in terms of kg. So the input that we have is 2,000 kg. So 20% of this When I punch 20 over 100 times 2000, it's giving me 400 kg. So in terms of kgs, our normal loss is 400. Okay. Then in terms of amount, we have been given the scrap value for process A. Okay. And that scrap value is 500 kwacha per kg. So to find the amount, we have to multiply 400 kg times the 500 kwacha, which is giving me 200,000 kwacha as our normal loss amount. So in some cases, you'll find that they don't give you the scrap value. So if they don't give you the scrap value, you ignore. You don't put anything on the amount. But if they give you the scrap value for each process, for process A, you have to multiply by the quantity, then you put there. Okay. What else do we put on the credit side? The output. Okay, let's proceed to the output. So the output is there in the question. The actual output for process A, we have been told it's 1400 kg. So that's the quantity. We have 1400 kg. So when it comes to the amount, you don't put anything. Meanwhile, you wait. You just leave it like that. Okay. So now, once you do this, then you proceed to balancing your process account. So you start by balancing the quantity part. So we want to balance this part for the quantities and also this part for the quantities. Okay, let's do that. So we are going to draw a nice line here, you know. So we draw here, okay, balancing the quantity, we do the same. Even this side, on the part for quantities, we make some lines here. So when I check on my debit side, the quantity that I have is 2000. When I check on my credit side, the quantity, when I add 400 plus this, it's giving me 1800 kwacha. So meaning 2000 is big. So the bigger part, you put it both sides. So I'm going to put 2000 here. Then also this side, I put 2000. So now when you check where the shortage is, so we have a shortage on the credit side. Because here, it's when we add, it's giving us 18. So there's a 200 shortage. So if the shortage is on the credit side, we call it abnormal loss. If the shortage is on the debit side, we call it abnormal gain. Okay. So since it's on the credit side, we are going to call this abnormal loss. So since our shortage is on the credit side, we are calling it abnormal loss. So how much do we have in terms of the abnormal loss? We have 200 shortage. Okay. So for the amount, you also don't do anything. You leave it empty. Okay. So since we are done with balancing the quantities, we can now proceed to balancing the amounts. So now the question comes, how can we balance the amounts? On the debit side, it's easy to balance because we know all the amounts. But on the credit side, we can't balance because we have two parts that are not answered. Okay. We don't know the amount for the output. We don't know the amount for abnormal loss. So what do you do? So when you have two spaces without the amount, you have to find the cost per unit. How much does it cost per kg? So let's find the cost per kg. Okay. So cost per kg. Cost per kg. So this one is given by the total input amount. So it's total input amount. So total input amount, then minus the normal loss amount. So total input amount minus the normal loss amount, okay, then over the input quantity, over input quantity minus the normal loss quantity. Normal loss quantity. Okay, so this is the formula for finding the cost per unit. So cost per unit, we are saying is total input amount minus normal loss amount over input quantity minus normal loss quantity. Okay, so from the question, we can see the total input amount. We'll just find it by adding all these. So we'll add all these amounts. That's how we are going to find the total input amount. For the normal loss amount, we are just getting this 200,000 kwacha. Okay, so we can put, so when I add the amounts on my debit side, it's giving me 29,920,000. So this is my total input amount, then minus my normal loss amount, which was 200,000 kwacha. Okay, then we divide by the input quantity. So the input quantity, we have 2,000, that's what we are inputting. Then our normal loss quantity, it's 400 kg. Okay, so on top, when I subtract, it's giving me 29,720,000. Okay, then down, when I subtract, it's giving me 1,600 kwacha. So when we divide, then we can have our cost per unit or the cost per kg. So the cost per kg, it's giving me 18,575. So this is the cost per kg. Okay, so you have to show this when you are doing your work because it also contributes to the marks. So you have to write somewhere where it can be seen, maybe below your table. Yeah, so this is the cost per kg. So we have found 18,575 kwacha. So once you find the cost per kg, then we can proceed to finding the amounts of the output. So we'll multiply these kgs by the cost that we found, which was 18,575. So when we multiply, when I multiply, what's giving me? It's giving me 26,005,000. So 26,005,000, that's what I'm getting. Then for the abnormal loss, you do the same. You multiply these kgs by the cost per kg. So when I multiply 200 times 18,575, it's giving me 3,715,000. Okay, so once you do this, then you can proceed to balancing the amount because we now have the missing parts. So since we have the missing parts, we can proceed to balancing the amounts. So we are going to add everything on the debit side, all these. Then we do the same on the credit side, we add. So these amounts are supposed to be the same. So when you add, you find the same figure, it means you have done the correct job. So when I add on my debit side, it's giving me 29,920,000. So it's giving me 29,920,000. Okay, so this is what I'm getting on the debit side. Okay, then on the credit side, when I add all this, it's giving me the same figure, which confirms that our job, it's well done. So it's giving me 29,920,000. That's how we find process account. So we are done with process A. We can now go to process B account. So just a quick recap from process A. So doing a quick recap. So what we said about a process account, so we said a process account has the quantity amount on the debit side. You put everything where you spent money on: direct material, direct labor, process, and overheads. Then on the credit side, we want to put two things: the normal loss and the output. For the abnormal loss, we find it by balancing. So once you do that, you balance the quantities. Then where there is a shortage, that's where you put. If the shortage is on the credit side, you have abnormal loss. If the shortage is on the debit side, you have abnormal gain. Once you do that, if you have two empty spaces, you need to find the average cost per kg or the cost per kg, of which the formula, we said it was just total input amount minus the normal loss amount over the input quantity minus the normal loss quantity. Then you divide, then you multiply by this. That's how you get this. But if it was in the case, maybe you only have one part that is empty. Let's assume there is no abnormal loss. Everything is there. Then there's only one part that is missing. So you can find the missing part just by balancing. No need to find the cost per the unit. So you can find the total here and the total here, then the difference you put there. So we only do what I'm saying if it's only one empty space, but if there are two empty spaces like what we had, you need to find the cost per kg. Okay, let's now proceed to B for process B. Okay, so process B, let's do process B account. Okay, so the process account, the format is the same. We have the part for quantity, we have the part for amount. Same on the credit side, we have the part for quantity and we have the part for amount also. Okay, so we can proceed. So we said on the debit side we put everything where we are spending money on. On the credit side we put everything. On the credit side there is normal loss and the output. Okay, so now if you remember from the question, in the question we were saying the output for process A becomes the input for process B, where further material is added. What do we mean by that? So what we meant by that is that this 1400 kg, which is the output from process A, we are taking it here to be the input in process B. And what have we been told about process B? We have been told that further material is being added. So in the question, there is the part for material for process B. We have 1400 kg. So now, when we add this, that's coming from process A plus what we are adding, which is the mix. So it's giving us 2,800 kwacha. Okay, we are saying the direct material for process B, it's 2,800 in terms of kg. Why is it 2,800 kg? Because we are adding this that's coming from process A plus the mixture, which is already there in process B, which is 1,400 kg. So now, what about in terms of amount? So in terms of amount, we have to calculate the amount for the mixture that is there in B, and we also add these amounts. So even the amounts we are doing the same. So from process A, this is the amount that is coming, 26,500,000 kwacha. What about for process B? How much is the amount? So we multiply 1/4 times the 12,000 kwacha per kg that we were told in the question. So let's do that, then we add the two. Okay, so when I punch when I punch 1,400 kg in process B times 12,000 kwacha, it is giving me 16 million something. Okay, you can use the calculator. So I'm now going to add 16 million plus this 26 million from process A. So the total amount that I'm getting, it's giving me 42 million. Let me use a red pen. So it's giving me 42,805,000. So this is what I am getting. Okay, so then we can go to direct labor. So direct labor, these are the expenses we are spending money on labor. So direct labor. Okay, so in terms of quantity we don't put anything. In terms of amount for process B, it's 4,200,000 kwacha. What else? We are also spending money on process plant time. Okay, so process plant time, how many hours are there? So we have to multiply the same way we did for A. So when I multiply, it's giving me 5,800,000 kwacha. Okay, then we go to the overheads. So for the overheads, we'll do the same. So the overheads, is the same. So we already found the overhead absorption rate. We just have to multiply by the actual labor cost for process B. So the overhead absorption rate we found is 0.6. Then we multiply by the actual labor cost for process B, which is 4,200,000 kwacha. So we can multiply this. Okay, so when I multiply by 4,200,000 kwacha, what it is giving me, it's 2,520,000 kwacha. Okay, So this is about the debit side. So for now we can say we are done on the debit side. So material, labor, process, and overheads. Let's go to the credit side. So for the credit side, we said we only put two things, which are those. So we put the normal loss. Okay, so we can put our normal loss. So what's our normal loss in terms of quantities? So we are expected to produce 90, meaning the normal loss is 10%. So we can find 10% of the input. So the input here, it is 2,800 kg. So 10% is the normal loss. So we can find 10% of this. So when I punch the 10%, it's giving me 280 kg. Okay. So now 280 kg, what are we supposed to do to find the amount? We multiply this by the scrap value for the the scrap value for process B. For process A it was 500, for process B we have 1 pin. So when I multiply that, it's giving me 511,000. Okay, so this is what I have as my normal loss. Then after that we said what follows it, it's the output. So output is there in the question, the actual output of finished goods. We have been told that it's 2,620 kg. So for the amount, you don't put anything, you leave it, you found by balancing. Okay, so after doing this, what do we do next? We are now supposed to balance our quantities. So let's balance the quantities. So on the debit side, what do we have? We have 2,800 kwacha. Okay, so let me just do something here. We are going to balance it here. Okay, even this side we do the same. For the quantity, we need to balance it. So once you do these two, then it's balancing the quantities. Okay, so on the debit side we have 2,800. What about on the credit side? So on the credit side, when I add, it's giving me 2,900. And if you remember what we said, the bigger amount is the one that we put both sides. So since 2,900 is big, it's what we are going to put on both sides. So 2,900, even this side, 2,900. Okay, so where is the shortage? The shortage is on the debit side. By how much? So we have a shortage of 100 kg. So since it's on the debit side, we call it abnormal gain. So our shortage, we are going to call it abnormal gain. Okay, so how much in terms of kg? So our abnormal gain in terms of kg, we have we have 100 kg. Okay, then in terms of amount, you leave it blank, just like the way we left the abnormal loss blank. Okay, so now once you do this, we go to balancing the amount. So we can't balance the amount because we have two parts that are blank. We don't know our abnormal gain, we don't know the amount for the output. So how do you find? You find the cost per kg using the same formula for the cost per kg, of which we say the cost per kg is the total input amount minus the normal loss amount over the input quantity minus the normal loss quantity. Okay, let's do that. So we are saying the cost per kg. So cost per kg, we are saying is the total input amount minus the normal loss amount, okay, over the input quantity. So over the input quantity minus the normal loss quantity. Okay, so what's the total input amount? So for the total input amount, we are just adding all the amounts on the debit side, which are those. So we are just adding all these. That's the total input amount. Then the normal loss amount, we are just getting this one. Then for down, the input quantity. So the input quantity is only the material. This is what we had put in. So we'll put 2,000. We won't include this 100 kg, no. We are only getting this one as the input quantity. Okay. Then for the normal loss quantity, we have 280. Okay, let's do that. So total input amount, when I add all the amounts on the debit side, it's giving me 55 million 325,000 minus the normal loss amount, which is 511,000, then over the input quantity. We said we are only getting the 2,800. That's what we had put in. Then the normal loss quantity, so here it's 280. Smooth. Okay, that's nice. So once we do that, what follows next? We can subtract and divide. So when I subtract and divide, it's giving me 21,751.587. So this is the cost per kg. Okay, so since we have found this, we can now proceed to finding the amounts for the output and for the abnormal gain. Okay, so now here when I multiply when I multiply 100 kg times the cost per kg that we are finding, which is 21,775. So when I multiply, it's giving me 2 million. Let me use a blue color. So it's giving me 2,175,159. Okay, so we do the same for the output. Here we have to multiply 2,620 kg times the cost per kg that we found. So when I multiply, it's giving me 56,989,159,000 kwacha. Okay, so with that being said, what follows next is just to add now so that we can balance the amounts. So we are going to add everything on the debit side, and we are also going to add all the amounts on the credit side. So when I add all these amounts on the debit side, starting from 42 million, it has given me 57,500,159 kwacha. Okay, so on the credit side, when I add, it's giving me the same amount, 57,500,000 kwacha and 159. Okay, so once you do this, it means it's job well done. It has balance on both sides. Okay, so that's how we deal with the processing account. Okay, so let's proceed to see. Okay, so we do the normal loss account. So the normal loss in terms of format is just same with these other guys. So it has the quantity part, amount, quantity, amount. Okay, so we have the quantity part and then the amount. Same here, we have the quantity part and the amount. Okay, so now what do you put here? So for the normal loss, you are just showing where the normal loss is coming from. So in this case, we had normal loss from both process A and process B. So under process A, you just show it here that from process A, we have a normal loss. How much in terms of quantities? We had 400 kg. Okay, then in terms of amount, how much was it? It was 200,000. Then process B, we do the same, because these things were on the debits, were on the credit side in the process accounts. Here we are putting them on the credit side. Okay, then for process B, in terms of quantity, how many kgs do we have? As normal loss, we had 280 kg. Then in terms of amount, it's 511,000. Okay, so once you do that, what follows now, it's going on the credit side, just balancing the amounts. So we can balance here. When we balance the quantities, what do we have? Here we have 680. Here we are just adding. When we add, it's giving me 711,000. Okay, then when we go on the credit side, so we are going to transfer this to the scrap account. Yeah, so here we'll say scrap account. Okay, so scrap account, how much in terms of total? We are just trying to balance. Okay, so what is going to the scrap account is 680. That's how we can balance, because here we have 680, then here we have 711. So the amount, we put 711. So that's about it, the normal loss. Just simple and straightforward. Yeah, with that being said, we can proceed to question C. So this was question C. We can go to question D, where they want us to do the abnormal loss. Okay, so the abnormal loss, the format is the same: quantity, amount, quantity, amount. Okay, so it's abnormal loss or abnormal gain. Okay, so now when you check from process A, so in process A, what we had was abnormal loss, which is 200 kg. For process B, what we have is abnormal gain, and it's on the debit side. So when we come here, we put opposite from how they were appearing on the process account. So for process A, what we have is abnormal loss. Since it was on the credit side, here we'll put it on the debit side. So what are we saying? So we are saying we have abnormal loss coming from processing. So we have abnormal loss which is coming from processing A. In terms of quantities, what do we have? We have 200 quantities. In terms of amount, what do we have? We have 3,715,000 as our abnormal loss. Okay. Then when we go to process B, what we have, it's abnormal gain. So abnormal gain is on the debit side. So when we go to the abnormal loss or gain account, we are going to put it on the credit side. Okay. So where is our abnormal gain coming from? It's coming from processing B. Okay. How much was the gain in terms of quantity? So what we have is 100. It was 100 kg. So in terms of amount, it was how much? It was 2,175,000. 2,175,159 kwacha. Okay, so we have put what we have. So now when you do that, you need to, since we have made, like for example this one, we have made abnormal loss from process A, which is 200 kg. So now we have to transfer this amount to the scrap account. So how do we transfer it? If the abnormal loss, under the abnormal loss and gain account, we have put it on the debit side, so the scrap value, we'll put it on the credit side. Okay, so what am I saying? So for this one, I'm going to say scrap here for the abnormal loss, because abnormal loss here we are putting it on the debit side, so the scrap party is going to go on the credit side. So how much? What we have is 200 kgs. Okay, so we have 200 kg as the scrap. So now we have to multiply this by the amount of the scrap value for process A. So process A, the amount of scrap value is 500 kwacha per kg. So we multiply 500 kwacha by this 200 kg, which came as the abnormal loss from process A. So when I multiply in terms of amount, it's giving me 100,000. So under quantity here, we are first going to put 200 kg. Then for the amount, it's giving me 100,000. So just a quick recap on this one. So we are saying, in the abnormal loss or gain account, we have to identify what we had. So from process A, we identify that what we had was abnormal loss. So abnormal loss was on the credit side. When we are entering it into this account, we put it on the debit side. But when you want to transfer this abnormal loss to the scrap value, you have to put it on the debit side, and that's what we have done. So you transfer by the scrap value amount. Okay, then we do the same for process B. We had an abnormal gain. So since abnormal gain here is on the credit side, when we want to transfer this abnormal gain to the credit side, when we want to transfer this abnormal gain to the scrap account, it's going to go on the debit side. Okay, so I'll write here as scrap. Okay, so how much do we have as the abnormal gain? So we have 100 kg. We have to multiply this by the price of scrap value for processing B. So it's 1,825. Okay, so when we do that under quantity, I'll put it's 100 kg, then the amount, when I multiply, it's giving me 1,825. 182,500 kwacha. Okay, so yeah, 182,500 kwacha. That's what we have. So once you do that, it's the time to balance our accounts. So we can start by balancing the quantity part. Okay, so we can balance this quantity here. So let me balance what we have here, and also the quantities this side. Okay, so when I add here, it's just giving me 300. Okay, when I add this side, it's the same 300. Okay, then now we go to the amount, so we add this side and this side, then we see which side has a bigger part. So when I add on my debit side, it's giving me 3,897. Okay, so when I add this side, what I'm getting is, when I add, so it is giving me 3 million. So meaning 3 million is big, so we'll put it on both sides. So we'll put 3 million 897 500. Okay, so since this is the biggest amount, even this side will do the same. 3 million 897 500. Okay, so now once we do that, we can find the difference. So the shortage is on the credit side, so we'll put the shortage here, and that shortage is what we are going to transfer to the profit and loss account. So we'll just say profit or loss account. If you want, you can call it the balancing figure, no problem. So in terms of quantity, we don't have anything. In terms of amount, when we add this and this, then we subtract from this. So the shortage, it's giving me 1,622,341. Okay, so once we do that, then we are done with the abnormal loss or abnormal gain account. Okay, so we do the last part. This question is so long. Thank you for your patience that you have managed to finish. Spasiba. Okay, so now let's go to the last part for the finished goods account. So a finished good is just like a small and like a quick account. So we know that we are producing something. We started with process A, then we finish in process B. So those are the goods that we are getting. Okay, so the finished goods, we put them on the credit side, because in process B the output of finished goods was on the credit side. Here we'll put it on the debit side. Okay, so let me just write here, where is the finished goods coming from? So they are coming from process B. How much in terms of kg do we have for finished goods? So finished goods in terms of kg, we have 2,620. Okay, then in terms of amount, how much was there? We had 56,989,159. Okay, so then here, what do you put on the credit side? Nothing, it's just balancing the amounts. So we balance here, we also balance here. So in terms of balancing the kgs, we have 2,620. The amount, we have 56 989 159. We do the same on the credit side. So the quantities to this, then the amount, that same one, 56 989 159. Okay, so now what about the balancing figure? What is it called? So the balancing figure, you can call it the cost of sales, because now since they are finished goods, we can take them to cost of sales under the income statement there. So the balancing figure, we are going to call it cost of sales. Okay, so how much in terms of quantity? This same one, we are just trying to balance. 620 the amount, we have 56 989 159. Okay, that's all. This is how you are supposed to answer a process account without WIP.